the grim darkness of the far future, where the Imperium of Man wages eternal war against countless threats, one name strikes terror into the hearts of even the bravest warriors: Khorne, the Blood God. This malevolent deity of the Chaos Pantheon embodies rage, violence, and bloodshed, commanding legions of devoted followers who seek only to spill blood in his name. Khorne's influence reaches far beyond the warp, corrupting mortals and immortals alike with an insatiable thirst for carnage. His symbol, a stylized skull wreathed in blood, serves as both a warning and a rallying cry for those who worship at the altar of destruction. The Blood God's domain extends across countless battlefields, where the clash of steel and the screams of the dying fuel his ever-growing power. Khorne cares not from whence the blood flows, only that it does, and his followers eagerly oblige, engaging in brutal combat with friend and foe alike. Within the ranks of Khorne's armies, mighty champions rise to prominence, their bodies twisted and enhanced by demonic gifts. These fearsome warriors lead vast hordes of berserkers, bloodletters, and other savage entities into battle, leaving nothing but ruin in their wake. Khorne's influence is not limited to mere mortals, as even the mightiest space marines have fallen to his corrupting touch. The Chaos Space Marines, who pledge their allegiance to the Blood God, become unstoppable engines of destruction, their minds consumed by an unquenchable rage that drives them to ever greater acts of violence. The World Eaters, once a proud legion of the Emperor's finest, now serve as Khorne's most devoted followers. Led by the Primarch Angron, these savage warriors have forsaken all semblance of humanity in their pursuit of endless slaughter. On countless worlds, cultists of Khorne work in secret, plotting bloody uprisings and performing dark rituals to summon their god's demonic servants. These cults spread like a virus, infecting entire populations with their violent ideology and paving the way for full-scale invasions. Khorne's prominence in the Warhammer 40,000 universe stems from his role as the embodiment of humanity's darkest impulses. In a galaxy torn apart by endless conflict, the Blood God's influence permeates every aspect of warfare, from individual skirmishes to system-wide campaigns. The Chaos God's existence predates the Imperium itself, with roots stretching back to the turbulent age of strife. As humanity's interstellar civilization collapsed, the collective psychic energy of countless bloody conflicts coalesced in the warp, giving birth to Khorne in his modern form. Throughout the millennia, Khorne's power has waxed and waned, but his presence remains a constant threat to imperial stability. The Blood God's followers seek not only to overthrow the Emperor's rule, but to plunge the entire galaxy into a state of perpetual violence. Khorne's importance extends beyond mere physical conflict, as he represents the corrupting influence of rage and bloodlust on the human psyche. His ability to twist even the noblest warriors into savage killers serves as a stark reminder of the thin line between order and chaos. The Blood God's existence challenges the very foundations of imperial doctrine, offering a dark alternative to the Emperor's vision of a united humanity. Khorne's promise of power through violence appeals to those disillusioned with the Imperium's rigid hierarchy and oppressive rule. In the grand tapestry of the 41st millennium, Khorne serves as a counterpoint to the forces of order. His followers' relentless assaults on imperial worlds keep the Adeptus Ministorum in a constant state of vigilance, ever watchful for signs of heretical cults and demonic incursions. The threat posed by Khorne extends to other factions as well. Even the inscrutable Aldari and the all-consuming Tyranids must contend with the Blood God's influence, as his followers' actions can upset carefully laid plans or divert precious resources. Khorne's significance in the broader narrative of Warhammer 40,000 lies in his role as a catalyst for conflict. The Blood God's machinations often serve to ignite powder kegs of tension, turning simmering resentments into full-blown wars that engulf entire sectors. The eternal struggle against Khorne's forces has shaped imperial military doctrine, influencing everything from Space Marine training regimens to the development of specialized weapons and tactics designed to combat chaos-tainted foes. As a focal point for countless stories and campaigns, Khorne provides players and fans with a compelling antagonist whose motivations are both primal and comprehensible. The Blood God's straightforward ethos of violence and conquest offers a stark contrast to the more subtle machinations of other chaos deities. The origins of Khorne trace back to the tumultuous era preceding the Age of Strife, when humanity's psychic potential began to manifest on an unprecedented scale. As civilizations crumbled and wars erupted across the galaxy, the collective anguish and bloodlust of countless souls coalesced in the warp, giving birth to the entity that would become the Blood God. Initially, Khorne existed as a primal force of aggression, drawing strength from every act of violence committed in real space. As millennia passed, this nascent deity evolved, developing a consciousness that craved ever greater displays of martial prowess and brutality. The rise of the Imperium of Man and the subsequent Horus heresy provided Khorne with an unprecedented opportunity to expand his influence. The galaxy-spanning civil war that followed Horus's betrayal fed the Blood God's power to new heights, as billions of lives were sacrificed in senseless carnage. Khorne's ascendancy among the Chaos Gods was cemented during this period, as the widespread bloodshed and destruction aligned perfectly with his domain. The corruption of the Primarchs and their legions, particularly Angron and the World Eaters, marked a significant victory for the Lord of Skulls. In the aftermath of the Horus heresy, Khorne's followers scattered across the galaxy, establishing cults and warbands dedicated to spreading their god's violent creed. These devotees ranged from lowly cultists to mighty Chaos Space Marines, each seeking to prove their worth through acts of unbridled savagery. The ensuing millennia saw Khorne's influence wax and wane as the tides of war ebbed and flowed across the Imperium. Major conflicts, such as the periodic Black Crusades led by Abaddon the Despoiler, invariably strengthened the Blood God's position within the Chaos Pantheon. Khorne's relationship with the other Chaos Gods has always been complex and antagonistic. While united in their opposition to the forces of order, the Dark Gods constantly vie for supremacy among themselves, with Khorne's straightforward approach often clashing with the more subtle schemes of his rivals. The Blood God's impact on Imperial history cannot be overstated. Countless worlds have fallen to Khornada incursions, their populations either slaughtered or corrupted into frenzied worshippers. Even victorious Imperial forces often find themselves forever changed by their encounters with Khorne's followers, the seeds of doubt and rage planted in their minds. Throughout the millennia, Khorne has spawned innumerable demon princes and champions, each embodying some aspect of his violent nature. These legendary figures, such as Khorne the Betrayer and Doombreed, have left indelible marks on the galaxy, their names spoken in hushed whispers by friend and foe alike. As the 41st millennium draws to a close, Khorne's power continues to grow. The fracturing of the Imperium following the creation of the Great Rift has provided new opportunities for the Blood God's followers to sow chaos and destruction on an unprecedented scale. The genesis of Khorne's cult can be traced to humanity's earliest conflicts, long before the rise of the Imperium. Ancient myths speak of blood-soaked rituals performed by primitive warrior tribes, unknowingly channeling the nascent power of the future Blood God. These primordial acts of violence, born from survival instincts and tribal rivalries, laid the foundation for Khorne's eventual ascension. As human civilization advanced, so too did the sophistication of warfare. The development of increasingly deadly weapons and tactics inadvertently fueled Khorne's growth in the warp. Empires rose and fell, their conquests and downfalls alike contributing to the Blood God's burgeoning strength. Each battle fought, each life claimed in combat, resonated with Khorne's essence, gradually shaping his consciousness. The Age of Strife marked a pivotal moment in Khorne's evolution. As warp storms isolated human worlds and plunged the galaxy into chaos, The widespread violence and desperation provided an unprecedented feast for the emerging deity. Entire planets succumbed to bloodthirsty madness, their populations engaged in ceaseless conflict that echoed Khorne's own insatiable hunger for battle. It was during this tumultuous period that the first true Khornate cults emerged. Warlords and tyrants, driven to extremes by the harsh realities of their isolated worlds, turned to blood rituals and savage combat rites to maintain their power. Unwittingly, they became the first mortal champions of Khorne, their actions drawing the attention of demonic entities that would later form the core of the Blood God's infernal legions. The coming of the Emperor and the subsequent Great Crusade presented both a challenge and an opportunity for Khorne. The unification of humanity under the Imperial banner threatened to stem the tide of constant warfare that had nourished the Blood God. However, the scale of the Crusade's conquests and the violence inherent in bringing worlds to compliance ensured that Khorne's power continued to grow, albeit in more subtle ways. It was the Horus heresy that truly catapulted Khorne to prominence among the Chaos Gods. The galaxy-spanning civil war provided an unprecedented bounty of bloodshed and carnage. Entire worlds burned, billions perished, and the very foundations of the Imperium were shaken. Khorne reveled in the slaughter, his influence spreading like wildfire among the ranks of both loyalist and traitor forces. The corruption of the Primarch Angron and his World Eaters Legion marked a significant victory for Khorne. Once noble warriors dedicated to the Emperor's vision, the World Eaters were transformed into savage berserkers, their minds consumed by an unquenchable thirst for violence. This perversion of the Emperor's finest served as a powerful symbol of Khorne's ability to corrupt even the most stalwart defenders of humanity. In the aftermath of the heresy, as the Imperium struggled to rebuild, Khorne's followers scattered across the stars. They established hidden cults on countless worlds, waiting for the opportune moment to strike. These sleeper cells would prove instrumental in future conquests, providing footholds for larger chaos incursions and sowing discord from within Imperial society. The millennia that followed saw Khorne's influence wax and wane, but never truly diminish. Each major conflict, from sector-wide crusades to localized uprisings, fed the Blood God's power. The constant state of warfare that defined the Imperium's existence ensured a steady supply of violence and bloodshed, sustaining Khorne even in times of relative peace. The ascendancy of Khorne is marked by several pivotal events that have shaped the course of galactic history. One of the earliest and most significant was the fall of the Primarch Angron and his World Eaters Legion during the Horus Heresy. This cataclysmic betrayal saw an entire Space Marine Legion succumb to the Blood God's influence, transforming from noble warriors into frenzied berserkers. The corruption of the World Eaters set a precedent for future Space Marine defections and demonstrated the insidious power of chaos to corrupt even the Emperor's finest. In the wake of the heresy, the First Black Crusade, led by Abaddon the Despoiler, marked a new chapter in Khorne's influence on the material realm. This massive incursion saw countless worlds fall to chaos, with Khornate warbands at the forefront of many assaults. The sheer scale of violence unleashed during this campaign elevated Khorne's status among the Chaos Gods and established a pattern of periodic invasions that would plague the Imperium for millennia to come. The Siege of Rock stands out as a testament to Khorne's ability to corrupt from within. What began as a simple rebellion on an Imperial armory world escalated into a 17-year campaign of unimaginable brutality. Khornate cults, which had festered in secret for generations, emerged to lead the insurrection, transforming the planet into a blood-soaked hellscape that drew the attention of demons and Chaos Space Marines alike. The Color-Cost Blood Crusade represents one of the largest purely Khornate invasions in Imperial history. Led by the bloodthirster Angrath the Unbound, this massive force cut a swath of destruction across multiple sectors, culminating in an epic battle on the world of Armageddon. The sheer scale of the slaughter wrought by this crusade served to greatly empower Khorne and his demonic legions. The creation of the Great Rift, also known as the Cicatrix Maledictum, marks perhaps the most significant event in recent history for all Chaos forces, including Khorne's followers. This galaxy-spanning tier in reality has allowed for unprecedented demonic incursions and greatly weakened the Imperium's defenses. For Khorne, the rift represents an opportunity to unleash his forces on a scale never before seen. The fall of Cadia stands as a crucial moment in Khorne's resurgence. The destruction of this linchpin world, which had stood as a bulwark against chaos for millennia, opened the floodgates for warp-based invasions. Khornate warbands were among the first to exploit this weakness, launching devastating raids deep into Imperial territory. The devastation of Baal, while primarily associated with the Tyranid threat, also saw significant Khornate involvement. As the homeworld of the Blood Angels chapter teetered on the brink of annihilation, Khorne's forces sought to corrupt these noble space marines, playing on their genetic predisposition towards violence. While ultimately unsuccessful, this campaign demonstrated Khorne's opportunistic nature and his willingness to exploit any weakness. The War of Beasts on Vigilis showcased Khorne's influence even in conflicts not directly under his control. As various factions fought for control of this strategically vital world, Khornate cults emerged from the shadows, their actions amplifying the violence and drawing the conflict into a protracted bloody stalemate that perfectly served the Blood God's interests. The Indomitus Crusade, launched in response to the creation of the Great Rift, has paradoxically served to further Khorne's goals. While ostensibly an imperial campaign of reconquest, the sheer scale of warfare involved has provided ample opportunities for Khornate forces to engage in battle and harvest skulls for their Dark Master. Most recently, the rise of the Great Devourer and the increasing Tyranid presence in the galaxy has created new opportunities for Khorne's followers. The all-consuming nature of the Tyranid threat has forced many worlds to adopt increasingly militaristic and violent measures for survival, inadvertently aligning themselves more closely with Khorne's ethos. Additionally, the epic clashes between Tyranid hive fleets and Khornate warbands have resulted in unprecedented levels of carnage, further empowering the Blood God. Khorne's influence permeates the Warhammer 40,000 universe on multiple levels, from the cosmic to the personal. At its core, the Blood God represents the most primal and visceral aspects of conflict, embodying not just violence, but the thrill of combat, the rush of adrenaline, and the intoxicating power of dominance over others. This multifaceted nature allows Khorne to appeal to a wide range of followers, from lowly cultists to mighty warriors. The psychology behind Khorne's appeal is complex. For many, the Blood God offers a path to power and agency in a galaxy where individual lives hold little value. In the face of the Imperium's oppressive regime or the myriad Xenos threats, turning to Khorne can seem like a way to seize control of one's destiny. This illusion of empowerment is a crucial tool in Khorne's arsenal, drawing in those who feel powerless or marginalized. Khorne's philosophy of strength through conflict resonates deeply within the militaristic culture of the 41st millennium. Even those who do not explicitly worship the Blood God may find themselves inadvertently aligning with his principles. This subtle corruption can be seen in the increasing brutality of Imperial tactics and the glorification of violence within many Space Marine chapters. The relationship between Khorne and his followers is parasitic in nature. While the Blood God grants his worshippers enhanced strength and combat prowess, these gifts come at the cost of sanity and self-control. The more a follower embraces Khorne's gifts, the more they become a slave to their own violent impulses, fueling a cycle of ever-increasing bloodshed. Khorne's impact on warfare in the 41st millennium cannot be overstated. The constant threat of Khornate incursions has forced the Imperium to adapt its military strategies, developing specialized units and tactics to counter berserker assaults. This arms race has led to an overall escalation of violence across the galaxy, paradoxically serving Khorne's interests even as the Imperium seeks to combat his influence. The manifestation of Khorne's power in the material realm takes many forms. From the summoning of lesser demons to the creation of warp storms, the blood god's influence can reshape reality itself. These phenomena serve not only as weapons of war, but as a means of psychological warfare, instilling terror in Khorne's enemies and further fueling the cycle of violence. Khorne's role within the Chaos Pantheon is that of the blunt instrument, the embodiment of direct action. While gods like Tzeentch and Slaanesh rely on subtlety and manipulation, Khorne's approach is straightforward and brutal. This directness makes him both predictable and incredibly dangerous, as there is no mistaking the intentions of a Khornate warband. The iconography associated with Khorne, brass, blood, and skulls serves a deeper purpose beyond mere aesthetics. These symbols act as focal points for psychic energy, strengthening the connection between the material realm and Khorne's domain in the warp. The collection of skulls, in particular, is not just a gruesome trophy-taking exercise, but a ritualistic act that directly empowers the blood god. Khorne's influence extends beyond his direct followers to impact entire societies. Worlds that have experienced Khornate incursions often find themselves irrevocably changed, with survivors adopting more militant and aggressive stances even after the immediate threat has passed. This cultural shift can persist for generations, creating fertile ground for future corruption. The question of free will is central to any discussion of Khorne's influence. While many of his followers claim to have chosen their path freely, the reality is often more complex. Khorne's ability to exploit and amplify existing violent tendencies raises philosophical questions about the nature of choice and responsibility in a universe where gods can directly influence mortal minds. In conclusion, Khorne represents more than just mindless violence. He embodies the complex relationship between conflict, power, and human nature. His continued prominence in the 41st millennium serves as a dark reflection of a society trapped in endless war, where the line between necessity and excess has long since blurred. Understanding Khorne is key to comprehending the grim darkness of the far future, where there is only war and the laughter of thirsting gods. The conflict surrounding Khorne involves numerous factions, each with their own motivations and approaches. At the forefront stand the devoted followers of the Blood God, a diverse array of warriors and cultists united in their thirst for violence. These range from the mighty Chaos Space Marines of the World Eater's Legion to the frenzied mortal berserkers who lead uprisings on countless worlds. Opposing Khorne's forces, we find the stalwart defenders of the Imperium of Man. The Space Marines, genetically enhanced super soldiers, often form the first line of defense against Khornate incursions. Chapters like the Blood Angels and their successors face a unique struggle, their gene seed flaws making them particularly susceptible to the Blood God's influence even as they fight against his followers. The Inquisition plays a crucial role in combating Khorne's influence within Imperial society. Inquisitors of the Ordo Malleus specialize in identifying and rooting out chaos cults before they can gain a foothold. Their methods, often brutal and uncompromising, sometimes mirror the very violence they seek to prevent, raising questions about the thin line between duty and corruption. Astra Militarum regiments find themselves on the front lines of many conflicts with Khorne's forces. These ordinary human soldiers must face the terrifying prospect of battling superhuman berserkers and demonic entities. The psychological toll of such encounters often leads to increased aggression and brutality among Imperial Guard units, inadvertently serving Khorne's purposes. The Adeptus Mechanicus approaches the threat of Khorne from a unique perspective. Their quest for knowledge and technological superiority sometimes leads them to study Khornate artifacts or weaponry, a dangerous gambit that has resulted in the corruption of entire Forge worlds. Conversely, their emotionless, logic-driven nature can make them resilient to Khorne's more primal appeals. Among the Xenos races, the Eldari stand out as particularly opposed to Khorne's influence. Their history with chaos and their psychically attuned nature make them acutely aware of the threat the Blood God poses. Craftworld war hosts and Harlequin troops often strike preemptively against budding Khornate cults, seeking to nip potential invasions in the bud. The Orcs present an interesting case in relation to Khorne. While not direct worshippers, their love of combat and violence aligns closely with the Blood God's domain. Some theorize that particularly powerful Orc wargs may unwittingly empower Khorne even as they fight against his demon legions for the sheer joy of battle. Tyrannid hive fleets, in their endless consumption of biomass, often clash with Khornate forces. These encounters result in battles of unparalleled ferocity as the mindless hunger of the Tyrannids collides with the bloodlust of Khorne's followers. The aftermath of such conflicts often leaves entire sectors destabilized and ripe for further chaotic incursion. The Tau Empire, with its philosophy of the greater good, stands as an ideological opposite to Khorne's ethos of individualistic combat prowess. However, their naive approach to the dangers of chaos has left many Tau world vulnerable to subtle Khornate corruption, often manifesting in the form of increased aggression among the warrior caste. Within the ranks of chaos itself, followers of other gods view Khornates with a mix of respect and wariness. Nurgle's disciples see the Blood God's followers as useful allies in spreading disease through warfare, while Tzeentch's acolytes often manipulate Khornate warbands as unwitting pawns in their complex schemes. Renegade Space Marine. Chapters that have not fully embraced chaos often find themselves caught between imperial retribution and the lure of Khorne's power. These desperate warriors sometimes turn to blood rituals as a means of survival, gradually sliding into full-fledged Khornate worship. Various mortal civilizations, from feudal worlds to advanced star empires, grapple with the threat of Khorne in their own ways. Some societies have developed complex warrior cultures that, while ostensibly loyal to the Imperium, bear striking similarities to Khornate philosophies. This blurring of lines between imperial cult and chaos worship presents a constant challenge for those tasked with maintaining the Emperor's rule. Lastly, we must consider the internal conflicts among Khorne's own followers. The Blood God's philosophy of strength through conflict encourages constant infighting and power struggles within his ranks. Champions rise and fall quickly, each seeking to prove their worth through ever greater acts of violence, often turning on their own allies in the process. The culmination of Khorne's influence in the Warhammer 40,000 universe reaches its zenith with the onset of the Noctis Eterna, or the Long Night. This galaxy-spanning event, triggered by the formation of the Great Rift, marks a turning point in the eternal struggle between order and chaos. As reality itself tears asunder, Khorne's legions pour forth from the warp in unprecedented numbers, heralding an age of unparalleled bloodshed. On countless worlds, dormant Khornate cults burst into frenzied action, their long-awaited moment finally at hand. Entire populations are swept up in orgies of violence, their minds overwhelmed by the psychic resonance of the Blood God's laughter echoing across the stars. Planetary governors and imperial commanders find themselves facing enemies from without and within, as trusted advisors and even family members reveal their true allegiances in explosions of red-tinged fury. The Space Wolves chapter, long-standing enemies of chaos, face their greatest trial as the Fenris system becomes a focal point for a massive Khornate invasion. Led by the demon Primarch Angron himself, waves of World Eaters and demonic legions crash against the adamantium walls of the Fang. The Sons of Russ fight with unmatched ferocity, their own barely contained savagery a mirror to the foes they face. This epic confrontation serves as a microcosm for the wider conflict engulfing the galaxy. In the Webway, ancient Aldari defenses falter under the weight of Khornati incursions. Craft worlds that have drifted in serene isolation for millennia find themselves beset by bloodthirsters and their demonic hosts. The Eldari's grace and precision are tested against the raw fury of Khorne's elite, their hit-and-run tactics proving less effective against foes who care nothing for self-preservation. The Forges of Mars, heart of the Adeptus Mechanicus, do not escape the touch of the Blood God. Deep within the Red Planet's labyrinthine depths, tech priests uncover long-buried chaotic artifacts, their machine logic insufficient to resist the lure of Khorne's whispered promises of power. As corrupted war machines burst forth from hidden vaults, the loyal servants of the Omnissiah find themselves in a desperate struggle to prevent Mars from becoming a new throne of skulls for the Lord of Battle. Aboard the Space Hulk Harbinger of Torment, a coalition of Chaos Space Marines from various legions engages in a brutal free-for-all to determine who will lead the vessel on its path of destruction. What begins as a contest of champions devolves into a ship-wide bloodbath, the violence reaching such a crescendo that it tears a hole in reality. From this warp rift emerges Angrath the Unbound, mightiest of Khorne's bloodthirsters, drawn by the sheer intensity of the conflict. On the shrine world of San Lior, Sisters of Battle stand as the last line of defense against a tide of Khornate berserkers. The planet's surface is transformed into a hellscape of burning cathedrals and blood-soaked plazas. As the battle reaches its peak, the Sisters' unwavering faith manifests in blinding displays of divine power, pitting the Emperor's miracles against the demonic sorceries of the Blood God. The Tau Empire, in its naivety, attempts to negotiate with a splinter fleet of the World Eater's Legion encountered near the Damocles Gulf. This diplomatic overture ends in predictable tragedy, with the water-caste emissaries brutally slaughtered. The incident sparks a philosophical crisis within Tau society, challenging their beliefs in the possibility of universal cooperation and pushing their military doctrine towards a more aggressive stance. In the depths of Kamara, the Dark Eldar find their hidden realm threatened as never before. The sheer amount of death and suffering occurring across the galaxy supercharges the warp, allowing Khorne's influence to seep even into the Dark City. Witch cults, already devoted to the spectacle of violence, begin to embrace increasingly brutal and overtly chaotic practices, blurring the lines between their traditional gladiatorial displays and outright Khornate worship. The Necrons, long dormant, awaken to a galaxy in flames. Their cryptechs and pharaons analyze the threat posed by Khorne's ascendancy, calculating the risk to their plans for galactic dominion. In a move that surprises both allies and enemies alike, certain Necron dynasties form temporary alliances with Imperial forces, seeing the forces of chaos as the greater threat to their vision of a stable, ordered galaxy under Necron rule. The aftermath of Khorne's cataclysmic assault on the galaxy leaves an indelible mark on the Warhammer 40,000 universe. Countless worlds lie in ruin, their surfaces transformed into barren wastelands where rivers of blood flow through valleys of bleached skulls. The psychic echoes of billions of violent deaths linger in the warp, creating turbulent storms that make warp travel even more perilous than before. In the wake of this devastation, the Imperium of Man finds itself irrevocably changed. Whole sectors have been lost, their populations either slaughtered or corrupted beyond redemption. Those Imperial worlds that survived the onslaught often emerge as shadows of their former selves, their societies militarized to an extreme degree in preparation for the next inevitable assault. This shift towards constant warfare, while necessary for survival, inadvertently pushes humanity closer to the very ethos they seek to resist. The Adeptus Astartes, backbone of Imperial defense, face a crisis of identity. Many chapters suffered catastrophic losses, forcing them to replenish their ranks with neophytes inducted and trained under the crucible of constant chaotic assault. This new generation of Space Marines exhibits a heightened aggression and battle lust that skirts dangerously close to the personality traits favored by Khorne. Chapter masters and chaplains must now walk a fine line between fostering the necessary warrior spirit and preventing their brothers from falling to the very enemy they abhor. Within the Adeptus Mechanicus, a schism emerges between those who advocate for the development of new technologies to combat the chaotic threat and those who fear such innovation as a path to tech heresy. This internal conflict hampers the Imperium's ability to rebuild and rearm, even as Forge Worlds churn out weapons and war machines at an unprecedented rate. The line between sanctioned technology and forbidden archaeotech becomes increasingly blurred as desperate magi turn to ever more extreme measures to gain an edge against the forces of chaos. The Eldari race, already teetering on the brink of extinction, finds its fate even more precarious in the aftermath of Khorne's rise. Several craft worlds lie in ruins, their infinity circuits shattered, and the souls they contain devoured by demons. The surviving Eldari become even more isolationist, focusing their dwindling resources on elaborate hit-and-run attacks designed to cripple chaotic forces before they can muster for another major assault. This necessity for constant preemptive action strains their already overtaxed population, pushing them closer to the brink of annihilation. In the realm of Ultramar, Robut Guilliman, Primarch of the Ultramarines, spearheads a radical reorganization of Imperial defense doctrine. Recognizing the existential threat posed by Khorne and his fellow Chaos Gods, Guilliman implements sweeping reforms aimed at creating a more flexible and responsive military force. This Codex Imperialis builds upon his earlier work, emphasizing rapid response capabilities and the creation of specialized anti-chaos task forces. However, these changes face resistance from conservative elements within the Imperium, who view any deviation from established tradition as potential heresy. The Tau Empire, shaken by its encounters with the full might of chaos, undergoes a cultural transformation. The naive optimism that once characterized their expansionist philosophy gives way to a grimmer, more pragmatic worldview. Ethereal leaders, confronted with the reality of chaos, begin incorporating warnings about the ruinous powers into their teachings of the greater good. This new understanding leads to the development of specialized anti-warp weaponry and tactics, marking a significant evolution in Tau military doctrine. Khorne, the dark city of the Drukhari, experiences an unprecedented period of instability in the wake of Khorne's ascendancy. The heightened warp activity makes it increasingly difficult for the Dark Eldar to maintain their psychic wards, leading to more frequent demonic incursions. This constant threat from within forces a reorganization of Khorne's power structure, with those cabals most adept at combating demonic entities rising to prominence. The line between combating chaos and embracing it becomes increasingly blurred for many Drukhari, leading to a surge in Khorne-worshipping cults within the Dark City. Among the Orcs, the aftermath of Khorne's Great Offensive sees the rise of a new breed of war boss. These leaders, having faced the full might of demonic legions, develop an uncanny resistance to warp-based attacks. Orc weirdboys theorize that constant exposure to Khorne's influence has somehow altered the Gestalt psychic field of the Orc race, making them more formidable opponents against chaos forces. This development adds a new wrinkle to the already complex balance of power in the galaxy. The Necron dynasties, observing the devastation wrought by Khorne's forces, accelerate their plans for galactic dominion. Viewing the forces of chaos as the primary threat to their vision of a stable, ordered galaxy, many Pharaons divert significant resources towards the development of anti-warp technologies. This focus leads to breakthroughs in null field generation and other technologies that prove effective against demonic entities, inadvertently providing unlikely aid to other races in their struggle against chaos. As the dust settles on this galaxy-shaking conflict, the balance of power shifts in unexpected ways. Old alliances crumble, and new ones form in the face of the ever-present chaotic threat. The lines between order and disorder, purity and corruption become increasingly blurred as all factions adapt to survive in this new, bloodier era of galactic history. In the grim darkness of the far future, the galaxy finds itself forever changed, the echoes of Khorne's laughter a constant reminder of the thin veil between reality and the nightmarish realm of the warp. Khorne's symbolism and themes permeate the Warhammer 40,000 universe, embodying the raw, primal aspects of warfare and violence. The blood god's iconography is dominated by the color red, representing both the blood spilled in his name and the burning rage that fuels his followers. This crimson motif extends beyond mere aesthetics, serving as a psychological trigger that ignites the battle lust in his worshippers and strikes fear into the hearts of his enemies. The recurring image of the skull in Khorne's symbology carries multiple layers of meaning. On a surface level, it represents the trophies collected by his champions, a grim tally of their martial prowess. Deeper analysis reveals the skull as a symbol of mortality and the futility of resistance against Khorne's overwhelming force. It serves as a reminder that in the end, all are equal in death, reduced to bare bone regardless of their station in life. Brass, the favored metal of Khorne, features prominently in his aesthetic. Its warm reddish hue echoes the blood theme, while its durability and resistance to corrosion symbolize the enduring nature of conflict in the galaxy. The use of brass in armor and weapons by Khorne's followers is not merely decorative, but serves as a conduit for the blood god's power, imbuing these items with a portion of his wrathful essence. The number 8 holds special significance in Khorne's numerology. This manifests in various ways, from the organization of his demonic legions to the design of his champion's armor. The octagonal shape, with its sharp angles and perfect symmetry, represents the rigid discipline and martial order that paradoxically underlies Khorne's philosophy of unbridled violence. Khorne's personal sigil, a stylized blood drop surrounding a skull, encapsulates his core ethos. This simple yet powerful image serves as a focal point for his followers' devotion and a warning sign to his enemies. The blood drop, often depicted in motion, symbolizes the dynamic and ever-changing nature of conflict, while the central skull reinforces the inevitability of death in Khorne's worldview. The theme of duality runs strong in Khorne's lore. He is simultaneously the god of bloodshed and martial honor, of mindless slaughter and disciplined warfare. This contradiction is reflected in his followers, who range from frothing berserkers to coldly calculating warriors. It speaks to the complex nature of violence itself, which can be both a destructive force and a crucible for forging strength and character. The concept of the worthy skull is central to Khorne's philosophy. Not all kills are considered equal in his eyes. Those taken from strong, challenging opponents are prized above all. This theme explores the idea of quality over quantity in warfare, adding depth to what might otherwise be seen as mindless violence. It also introduces a perverse form of respect between enemies, where the greatest hate is reserved for the most formidable foes. Khorne's realm in the warp, an endless plain of brass and bone swept by blood-red storms, serves as a physical manifestation of his themes. This bleak landscape represents the ultimate outcome of his philosophy, a universe reduced to an eternal battleground where only the strong survive. The ever-shifting nature of this realm mirrors the constantly changing face of war itself. The theme of corruption through violence is a key element of Khorne's influence. His power often manifests by amplifying existing aggressive tendencies, gradually pushing individuals and entire cultures towards more extreme forms of violence. This serves as a metaphor for how easily civilizations can slide into barbarism when constantly faced with existential threats. Khorne's relationship with time is another fascinating aspect of his symbolism. Unlike gods of decay or change, Khorne represents a kind of violent stasis, an eternal present of endless combat. This speaks to the cyclical nature of conflict in the Warhammer 40,000 universe, where peace is fleeting and war is the natural state of existence. The concept of Khorne cares not from whence the blood flows, encapsulates the indiscriminate nature of violence. This phrase, often repeated by his followers, highlights the equalizing effect of combat and the irrelevance of allegiance in the face of pure martial skill. It serves as a stark reminder of the ultimate futility of faction loyalties in a universe dominated by conflict. Finally, the theme of rage as a transcendent force runs throughout Khorne's lore. In his philosophy, anger is not just an emotion, but a gateway to heightened states of consciousness and power. This idea explores the thin line between controlled fury as a weapon and all-consuming rage that destroys the self, presenting a constant challenge to Khorne's followers to master their anger rather than be mastered by it. Khorne's influence reverberates throughout the Warhammer 40,000 universe, shaping events and characters in profound and often unexpected ways. The Blood God's presence serves as a constant catalyst for conflict, pushing individuals and entire civilizations towards ever more extreme acts of violence and warfare. Within the ranks of the Adeptus Astartes, Khorne's influence manifests in the genetic flaws of certain chapters. The Blood Angels and their successors grapple with the Red Thirst and Black Rage, conditions that mirror the bloodlust and fury embodied by Khorne. This connection raises uncomfortable questions about the true nature of these noble warriors and the fine line they walk between saviors and destroyers. The Ordo Malleus of the Inquisition finds itself in a constant arms race against Khorne's followers. Each new encounter with the Blood God's champions forces these daemon hunters to develop increasingly potent weapons and tactics. This escalation often leads inquisitors down morally ambiguous paths as they weigh the cost of using forbidden knowledge and technologies against the threat of chaotic incursion. Among the Eldari, the rise of Khorne has led to a resurgence of the striking Scorpion aspect warriors. These skilled combatants, who embody controlled aggression, are seen as a vital counterbalance to the unbridled fury of Khornata berserkers. Their philosophy of precise, lethal violence stands in stark contrast to the indiscriminate slaughter favored by the Blood God's followers. The Tau Empire's encounter with Khorne's forces has dramatically altered their approach to warfare. The ethereal caste, confronted with the reality of chaos, has been forced to reevaluate their doctrine of the greater good. This shift has led to the development of more aggressive combat doctrines and a growing acceptance of the necessity of violence in defending their ideals. In the dark city of Khorne, Khorne's influence has given rise to a new breed of gladiator in the witch cults. These warriors, teetering on the edge of full chaotic corruption, push the boundaries of violence even by Dark Eldar standards. Their brutal displays in the arenas serve as a grim reminder of the ever-present threat of chaos, even in a realm thought to be beyond the reach of the ruinous powers. The Orc race, already naturally inclined towards violence, finds itself unwittingly empowering Khorne through their ceaseless warfare. This symbiotic relationship has led some Orc weirdboys to experience visions of the Blood God, interpreting him as a manifestation of their own deity, Gork, or possibly Mork. This connection raises intriguing questions about the true nature of the Orc gods and their place in the pantheon of Warhammer 40,000. Within the Adeptus Mechanicus, the threat posed by Khorne has sparked a fierce debate over the use of combat stimulants and aggression-enhancing cybernetics. Some tech priests argue that such enhancements are necessary to match the fury of Khornate berserkers, while others fear that this path leads inevitably to corruption. This schism has far-reaching implications for the future of Imperial military technology. The Sisters of Battle, with their fervent faith and martial prowess, often find themselves on the front lines against Khorne's forces. This constant exposure to the Blood God's influence has led to the formation of specialized orders dedicated to combating Khornate incursions. These warriors walk a razor's edge, their zealotry and combat skill mirroring that of their enemies in many unsettling ways. Even the implacable Necrons have been forced to adapt to the growing threat posed by Khorne. Cryptechs have developed new weapons designed to disrupt the warp energies that fuel demonic entities, while overlords reevaluate their strategies to account for the unpredictable nature of chaos incursions. This focus on combating warp-based threats marks a significant shift in Necron military doctrine. The Tyranid hive mind, in its endless quest for adaptation and improvement, has begun to evolve strains specifically designed to combat Khornate forces. These new bioforms exhibit increased resistance to warp-based attacks and possess weapons capable of punching through the armor of Chaos Space Marines. This development showcases the Tyranids' terrifying ability to adapt to any threat, no matter how otherworldly. Among the mortal populations of the Imperium, Khorne's influence has led to a rise in extreme forms of religious devotion. Flagellant cults and militant orders proliferate, their members seeking to purge themselves of weakness through pain and violence. While ostensibly loyal to the Emperor, these groups often skirt dangerously close to heresy in their fanaticism. The constant threat of Khornate invasion has forced many planetary governors to implement draconian measures to root out potential cultists. This climate of suspicion and violence creates fertile ground for the very corruption it seeks to prevent, trapping many worlds in a vicious cycle of oppression and rebellion that ultimately serves Khorne's interests. Khorne, the Blood God, stands as one of the most compelling and terrifying entities in the Warhammer 40,000 universe. His presence serves as a stark reminder of the inherent brutality of the setting where constant warfare has become the norm. The simplicity of Khorne's ethos, the glorification of combat and bloodshed, belies a complex web of themes and implications that ripple throughout the galaxy. What fascinates me most about Khorne is the duality he represents. On one hand, he embodies mindless violence and destruction. Yet, on the other, he upholds concepts of martial honor and respect for worthy opponents. This contradiction adds depth to what could otherwise be a one-dimensional villain, inviting us to ponder the nature of conflict and the warrior's code in a universe where peace seems impossible. The psychological appeal of Khorne to his followers is particularly intriguing. In a galaxy fraught with uncertainty and oppression, the straightforward path of the Blood God offers a form of liberation. By embracing violence as the ultimate truth, Khorne's worshippers free themselves from moral constraints and existential doubts. This raises uncomfortable questions about the human psyche and our capacity for self-justification in the face of atrocity. I find the impact of Khorne's philosophy on various factions to be a masterful example of world building. The way different races and organizations react to and adapt their strategies against this threat showcases the diversity of the Warhammer 40,000 universe. It's particularly interesting to see how groups like the Tau, with their initially optimistic outlook, are forced to confront the harsh realities represented by chaos. The aesthetic associated with Khorne is both repulsive and oddly captivating. The sea of red, the mountains of skulls, the brass fortresses, all these create a visceral image that's hard to forget. This vivid imagery serves not just as window dressing, but as an integral part of the narrative, reinforcing the themes of violence and martial pride central to Khorne's identity. One aspect of Khorne's lore that I find particularly thought-provoking is the concept of violence as a universal language. In the diverse and often incomprehensible galaxy of Warhammer 40,000, combat becomes a form of communication transcending species and ideologies. There's a grim irony in the fact that bloodshed might be the one thing all races truly understand. The role of Khorne in the larger narrative of Warhammer 40,000 is crucial. As one of the four major Chaos gods, he represents a fundamental force of the universe, the inevitability of conflict. His existence seems to suggest that in this grim, dark future, peace is not only improbable, but perhaps impossible, raising questions about the ultimate fate of the galaxy and its inhabitants. I'm also intrigued by the philosophical implications of Khorne's nature. As a being empowered by all acts of violence, regardless of the perpetrator's allegiance, Khorne embodies the cyclical and self-perpetuating nature of conflict. This presents a bleak view of the universe, where even acts of righteous violence ultimately feed the very forces they seek to combat. The relationship between Khorne and the other Chaos gods offers another layer of complexity. Their eternal competition, punctuated by brief alliances, mirrors the ever-shifting loyalties and conflicts of mortal realms. This dynamic within the ruinous powers adds depth to the overarching narrative of chaos as a multifaceted and internally conflicted force. From a narrative perspective, Khorne provides an excellent foil for exploring themes of corruption and the thin line between justice and vengeance. Characters who start on a path of righteous retribution only to fall to Khorne's influence serve as cautionary tales, reminding us of the dangers of unchecked anger and the seductive power of violence. In conclusion, Khorne emerges as an incredibly multifaceted and influential entity within the Warhammer 40,000 universe. The Blood God embodies not just a primitive thirst for violence, but a complex philosophy deeply ingrained in the very fabric of galactic society. His influence is felt in every corner of the universe, shaping the destinies of individuals and entire civilizations alike. Examining Khorne, we see a reflection of the darkest aspects of human nature, amplified to an unimaginable scale. His cult serves as a grim reminder of how easily noble intentions can transform into unbridled cruelty. This cautionary tale is particularly relevant in a world where constant warfare has become the norm of existence. Paradoxically, Khorne also embodies certain aspects of honor and respect for worthy adversaries. This duality adds depth to his character, forcing us to contemplate the complex nature of conflict and martial valor. In a universe where peace seems an unattainable dream, Khorne's code offers a kind of structure and purpose for those lost in the endless chaos of war. The impact of Khorne on various Warhammer 40,000 factions demonstrates the masterful world-building of this universe. Each race and organization is forced to adapt to the threat he represents, often altering their fundamental principles and strategies. This provides a fascinating lens through which to view the diverse cultures and ideologies that populate this grim, dark future. Khorne's aesthetic, dominated by brass, blood, and skulls, has become iconic within the franchise. This vivid imagery serves not just as window dressing, but as an integral part of the narrative, reinforcing the themes of violence and martial pride central to the Blood God's identity. The visual language associated with Khorne contributes significantly to the overall atmosphere of dread and conflict that permeates the setting. The philosophical implications of Khorne's existence raise intriguing questions about the nature of reality in the Warhammer 40,000 universe. As a being empowered by all acts of violence, regardless of the perpetrator's allegiance, Khorne embodies the cyclical and self-perpetuating nature of conflict. This presents a bleak view of the cosmos, where even acts of righteous violence ultimately feed the very forces they seek to combat. Khorne's role in the grand narrative of Warhammer 40,000 cannot be overstated. As one of the four major chaos gods, he represents a fundamental force of the universe, the inevitability of conflict. His existence suggests that in this grim, dark future, peace is not only improbable, but perhaps impossible, raising profound questions about the ultimate fate of the galaxy and its inhabitants. The Blood God serves as an excellent narrative device for exploring themes of corruption and the thin line between justice and vengeance. Characters who begin on a path of righteous retribution only to fall to Khorne's influence serve as cautionary tales, reminding us of the dangers of unchecked anger and the seductive power of violence. In the end, while Khorne represents some of the darkest aspects of the Warhammer 40,000 universe, his presence enriches the setting immeasurably. The Blood God serves as a focal point for exploring complex themes of violence, honor, corruption, and the human capacity for both nobility and savagery. In the grim darkness of the far future, Khorne stands as a terrifying yet fascinating embodiment of the universe's harsh truths. As we reflect on Khorne's place in the Warhammer 40,000 mythos, we are reminded of the richness and depth of this fictional universe. It challenges us to confront uncomfortable truths about conflict, power, and the nature of humanity itself. In doing so, it offers not just entertainment, but a mirror through which we can examine our own world and the choices we face in times of strife.